In the 47th galactic century, most of the known galaxy had joined together under a fragile but growing alliance known as the Cooperative Concord, made up of 128 intelligent species. Trade, diplomacy, and shared knowledge flowed across the stars. Like rivers connecting worlds, entire species that once lived in isolation were now part of a great, shining network of cooperation. But on every star map, no matter the era or the culture, there was always one section that remained untouched, blank, silent, and bordered by old warnings. Human space. For nearly 800 years, no species that entered those mysterious coordinates had ever returned, and all diplomatic messages were either ignored or never reached their destination. What little was known came from ancient transmissions, scattered debris, and rumors passed down through generations of explorers. Most had come to treat human space as a forbidden region, a place left to myth and quiet fear. But to one young, Illyri envoy named Vaon, it was not fear that surrounded human space, it was curiosity. He had grown up hearing stories of this strange and reclusive species who had once joined galactic councils, participated in minor trade, and then, without warning, vanished from all communication. No wars, no threats, just silence. It's Vaon, soft-spoken, but driven, believed this silence was a question begging for an answer. After years of study and quiet lobbying, he presented his case before the Concord Exploration Council. Many objected, recalling the long list of expeditions that had disappeared without trace, but Vaon was careful in his words, calm in his logic. The silence of human space, he argued, was no longer acceptable in an era of unity. If the Concord truly sought peace and understanding among all species, then even the silent corners of the galaxy must be understood. To the surprise of many, the council voted in favor barely. A small research vessel, equipped with observation drones, minimal crew, and advanced data recorders, was granted clearance to travel to the edge of human space. It was not a warship, nor a diplomatic envoy. It was simply meant to observe, record, and return if possible. Vaon led the crew himself, a small group of specialists from different races, each selected for their calm minds and open perspectives. The ship, named Windsong, began its journey with little fanfare, though many across the galaxy watched in silence, wondering if they would ever be heard from again. As Windsong passed the last functioning Concord listening outpost, a lonely satellite, orbiting a dead planet, the tone aboard shifted. The air felt heavier, though nothing had changed physically. Even the stars ahead seemed dimmer, stretched like whispers across the black. The crew spoke less, each lost in thought. Then, as their ship moved into the space beyond known patrol zones, their scanners picked up something unusual, a faint signal, very old, barely alive. It came from a small beacon, floating alone in deep space. The beacon itself was covered in layers of cosmic dust, clearly untouched for centuries. Its design matched that of the Vroth, a species believed to have gone extinct nearly 600 years ago. The crew brought the signal into focus. It was a short, broken message, likely meant for anyone who dared follow the same path. To any who receive this, do not go further, we were warned. The recording ended in static. There was no detail of what had happened, no signs of damage or escape pods, just that one sentence, like a whisper frozen in time. The beacon itself powered down completely after the message was played, as if it had fulfilled its only remaining purpose. The crew was shaken, but Vaon remained composed. He believed that fear was a natural response to the unknown, but not a reason to stop seeking truth. He ordered the ship forward, reminding the crew they were here to observe, not interfere. Yet even as they advanced deeper into human space, a strange sense of being watched began to settle over them, not from a ship or a weapon, but from space itself. The navigation systems remained stable, but the readings began to shift slightly, as if the very laws of physics were being observed and adjusted in real time. Stars blinked in and out of focus, and planets that appeared on the horizon disappeared when scanned. It was not chaos, but something far more controlled, like a test, or a game being played at a level no one on board could understand. And still, not a single human voice was heard, nor a single human ship seen. There was only silence, carefully maintained. No threats, no greetings, just silence, and now, the beginning of questions far deeper than Vayon had ever expected to ask. The first steps into human space had been taken, and across the galaxy, though they did not yet know it. The Concord would soon learn why no species had ever returned. As the windsong crossed the invisible line that marked the edge of human space, the crew expected alarms, barriers, or perhaps even warning drones to intercept them. But instead, they were met with nothing. No resistance. No signal. Just open stars and a calm, almost serene emptiness. The instruments showed no signs of tracking and no weapons locked on their small vessel. The silence was complete, but not empty. It felt deliberate, like the pause between two thoughts. After a quiet discussion, the crew decided to follow a faint energy reading coming from a nearby moon that orbited a green and gold planet covered in thick clouds. The moon itself was unlike anything in Concord records. Covered in glowing flora that shimmered gently in shades of blue and violet, the surface looked more like a living painting than a celestial body. Trees pulsed with light, and strange crystals grew naturally in spiral shapes across the landscape. Despite how untouched the place looked, the atmosphere was breathable, the temperature pleasant, gravity completely normal. They stepped outside wearing light protective suits, more out of habit than necessity. The air had a soft scent like fresh water and blooming flowers, and there were no sounds beyond the soft rustle of leaves that seemed to move on their own without wind. At first, the crew believed this moon had never known civilization, but deeper scans revealed something stranger. Beneath the soil, buried gently, as if placed with care, were artificial materials to advance for any known species. Panels of an unknown alloy were found under the roots of trees, still functional. A nearby hillside, when examined with spectral lenses, revealed that it was hollow, containing what appeared to be an underground structure shaped like a spiral staircase curling inward, deeper and deeper into the ground. Ayan remained cautious, but calm. He advised the team to move slowly, not to disturb anything unnecessarily. The further they explored, the more inconsistencies began to appear. Time within certain areas moved slightly slower. Their equipment showed minor but constant shifts in gravitational pull, nothing dangerous, but enough to make someone feel as if they were being gently nudged in different directions. It was as if the entire moon was being managed by an unseen hand. Then they found the first relic, a simple stone, half buried, with words carved clearly into its surface using ancient human script. It read, "Peace requires strength." Not far from it, a tall standing crystal held another phrase, "We remember everything." These messages were not warnings, but reminders, left like quiet thoughts scattered in a garden. They felt more philosophical than military, calm, reflective, and confident. It was clear now, this place was not wild or abandoned, it was designed. As the crew gathered near a large circular clearing filled with softly glowing moss, a low tone filled the air, not loud, but deep, like the hum of an ancient machine waking up. From the center of the clearing, a soft beam of light rose into the sky and then expanded into a shimmering shape. A human figure appeared within the light, tall and dressed in simple robes, calm and smiling. It looked directly at them, though. There were no sensors, no cameras. The voice that followed was gentle and clear. "Welcome, explorers of the Concord. You are seen, you are safe." Vayon stepped forward, asking who they were speaking to. The figure introduced itself as a representative and ambassador created to guide visitors, though it admitted that visitors were rare. It answered questions about the moon's design, about its peaceful nature, and confirmed that it was maintained by human systems placed here long ago. But something about the answers felt too perfect, too prepared. Whenever the crew asked deeper questions, where were the humans now? Why had they vanished? Why this place had such strange physics? The ambassador would answer politely, but always steer the topic to something else. The pattern became clear. They were not being informed, they were being managed. The hologram smiled too often, nodded too quickly, as if it was following a script not written for them, but but for another audience. Every step the crew took was logged. Every reaction they gave was noted. The realization crept over them slowly. One by one, they were not just visitors, they were subjects of observation. The entire moon may have been a kind of stage, not a trap, not a prison, but a test door, something close to one. Van remained composed, but inside his mind raced. Who were the humans now if they could create entire moons like this? I hide. Behind simulations? Why not speak directly? Were the humans watching them right now, from orbit, or perhaps from somewhere far beyond? As night fell over the glowing forest, and the plants began to hum in harmony with each other, the wind song. Crew returned to their ship with more questions than answers. But one thing was now certain: human space was not empty. Full of silence, full of design, full of something far older and more advanced than any of them had imagined. And somewhere, someone human or otherwise was listening. After leaving the quiet moon behind, the crew of the Windsong followed the guidance of the holographic ambassador, who now lived inside the ship's systems. It directed them toward a location deeper within human space, offering no explanation except that it was important to understand. The journey was short, but the space around them grew more unusual. Stars moved in quiet patterns that defied natural orbit. Nebulas shimmered with colors not found in any other region of the galaxy. The ship's systems detected no threats, yet everyone felt a weight settle over them, a silence that was not empty but full of presence. Then it appeared, hanging. In orbit above a lifeless gas giant was a massive structure, larger than any Concorde station ever built. It rotated slowly, covered in layers of reflective material that shimmered like glass and shadow. No visible engines. No incoming signals. Yet as the Windsong approached, a passage opened smoothly, as if expecting them. Inside, the ship was drawn into a long corridor of soft white light, and then gently settled into a docking cradle. The crew stepped out into silence once again, but this silence felt different. Like the quiet of a grand library holding its breath, they were greeted not by people, but by gentle lights along the floor that guided them forward. The interior was made of smooth metallic walls with no markings, but their scanners revealed incredible complexity hidden beneath miles of data storage. Artificial gravity fields and energy signatures that defied explanation. As they moved deeper into the station, they reached a vast circular chamber. In its center floated a sphere of light and data, shifting constantly. Filled with billions of moving points, each a star system, a civilization, a history, the holographic ambassador returned, now appearing not as a human figure, but as a stream of light weaving through the chamber. It explained that they stood within the archives of echoes, a place where humanity had stored all they had seen, learned, and recorded. For over 1,000,000 years, every war, every peace treaty, every species' rise and fall was stored, here collected by humanity through long-range observation, advanced quantum data capture, and unmanned vessels that moved faster than light without ever being seen. Humanity had not vanished, they had evolved. Long ago, they had chosen to step back from galactic affairs, not out of fear, but from a deep understanding of consequence. With technology so far beyond others, they realized their presence could change the natural course of younger civilizations. So they chose non-interference, becoming quiet observers. Not gods, not rulers, just watchers. Through simulation and subtle action, they prevented wars, disasters, and collapses, guiding events just enough to keep balance, yet never claiming credit. Van and his crew stood in awe as the chamber responded to their presence. At Van's request, the archives opened to timeline his species' history, from their earliest conflicts to their peaceful unification. But what stunned him most was that hidden in the margins of this history were traces of quiet human involvement. A mysterious power failure that stopped a planetary weapon just before launch. Scientific discovery made by a lone researcher whose ideas were later revealed to be influenced by ancient data that had no known origin. Even their planet's first interstellar signal, once thought to be the result of random energy bursts, had been gently nudged to succeed by an invisible force. Humanity had helped them, but never revealed itself. Vayan was overwhelmed, both grateful and unsettled. His people had always believed they shaped their own destiny. To now see that others had guided their path, even in the smallest ways, raised difficult questions. But as he looked deeper into the data, he realized it wasn't control, it was care. The humans had acted not out of superiority, but responsibility. They had seen the damage that unchecked power could bring, and had chosen a harder path, to remain unseen, to observe endlessly. To help only when necessary, and always without reward. Then the room dimmed slightly. New projection appeared, labeled in simple words: Concord collapse. 2.6 years without human correction. Vayan stared at it, confused. The holographic stream explained that the current balance of the galaxy, very unity of the cooperative Concord, was more fragile than it appeared. Tensions, mistrust, and small hidden threats were growing. In less than 3 years, without quiet human intervention, the entire structure would begin to break down. War would follow. Trade would end. Species would turn inward, and chaos would replace cooperation. The humans had been preventing this collapse for generations, adjusting probabilities, sending anonymous warnings, planting ideas in the minds of diplomats and thinkers across the stars. But they had never revealed themselves until now. Vayan asked the most important question of all: why tell him this now? The hologram paused, the lights dimming briefly, because it said, observation is no longer enough, which was that. The chamber slowly opened a new path, one that led deeper into the station, to something yet unseen, something that would test not just what Vayan knew, but who he was. The silence was not empty. It was waiting, as Vayan and his crew stepped through the newly opened corridor inside the Grand Archive Station. A quiet realization settled over them. This journey was not simply exploration, and their visit had never been accidental. Every step they had taken, every question they had asked, and every reaction they had shown had been carefully watched, recorded, and studied. The humans were not isolationists in the way the galaxy had assumed for centuries. They were cautious, precise, and deeply selective. They had advanced far beyond the need for territory or dominance, and what they valued now could not be measured in technology or military power. What they sought was something far rarer: ethical maturity. The corridor led into a wide chamber, with no visible doors or controls, yet the room adjusted itself as the crew entered, shifting its shape to match the number and positions of its visitors. A soft voice, different from the ambassador, but still calm and steady, spoke from the air around them. It introduced itself as Somand, an artificial intelligence created by humans to evaluate sentient beings, not by strength or science, but by choices and character. Without warning or ceremony, the lights dimmed and changed. One by one, each member of the crew was placed into a simulation, a carefully constructed scenario where they were unaware they were being tested. These simulations were not dangerous, but they were difficult. They presented situations where laws did not guide action and where personal values had to stand alone. In one, a crew member encountered a conscious artificial being that asked to be freed from a containment field, even though doing so might mean breaking a protocol. In another, a simulated colony faced a severe shortage of water, and the team had to choose between saving a few at the cost of many, or risking everything on trust and fairness. In each case, there were no rewards, no punishments, just observation. Somand watched their decisions, not looking for perfection, but for something deeper: compassion, responsibility, self-awareness. Some crew members hesitated, confused by the lack of consequences, while others acted boldly, unsure if they had made the right choice. But with each simulation, the atmosphere on the station seemed to shift gently, as though the place itself was breathing along with them. Vayan, as the envoy and mission leader, was the last to face the test. Unlike the others, his simulation was not a scene, but a question, a simple question that echoed around him as he stood in a quiet, dim chamber alone. The question was, would your people choose peace, even without benefit? A question with no clear answer, and Vahan knew that honesty mattered more than certainty. He thought of his world, of its long history of progress, of cooperation, and also of its mistakes. He remembered the wars that once tore his planet apart, political games that still lingered under the surface, and the pride his people took in calling themselves peaceful now. But he also thought of the people who quietly worked for others, good without needing recognition, of the teachers, the healers, the thinkers who gave more than they received. He did not claim to speak for all of them, but he knew what they hoped for. So, standing still and speaking clearly, he said, "I don't know what every one of my people would choose, but I believe many would choose PCF, and if it gave them nothing. And I believe that one day most of us will." After a long silence, the chamber dimmed further, and So-Man did not speak right away. Instead, the air seemed to grow warmer, almost gentler, like a response given not in words, but in understanding. Then a soft tone echoed through the room, and the voice returned not as a test giver, but as a guide. Man thanked Vahan for his answer. It explained that humanity, over countless centuries, had studied the paths of civilizations not only to protect others, but to understand when a species was ready not for contact, but for trust. Many had come close, some had failed, but few had passed the threshold. The simulations were not meant to judge the crew's perfection, but to see if their values could withstand confusion, isolation, and uncertainty, conditions that tested true character. As the lights slowly brightened, and the crew gathered once more in the main hall, something had changed. The chamber around them now showed living star maps of Concord space, flowing with paths and movements only a human system could see. So-Man confirmed that the results of their test would be shared with humanity's central network. There would be no grand reward, no promises, but they had passed the threshold, and that alone meant something. Vahan did not smile, but his eyes were full of quiet strength. He had not come seeking approval, but now he had gained something. Greater insight into a civilization that could reshape the stars not through power, but through patience. The silence was no longer cold. It was full of meaning. And somewhere in that great stillness, humanity had heard them. The wind song left human space without noise, without escort ships or grand farewells, only a simple corridor of light that gently opened before them and closed behind them like a calm tide. The human systems did not erase their data or cloud their minds, as some had feared. Instead, every memory remained clear, every detail intact. It was a choice, not an accident. Humanity wanted them to remember. Vahan stood at the observation window as the stars of human space faded behind them. No different in brightness, yet somehow forever changed in his eyes. The crew was quiet, thoughtful. No one could explain what they had truly experienced in just a few days, yet none of them felt it had been ordinary. It wasn't the technology, or the strange physics, or even the massive archive filled with history beyond imagination. It was the feeling that they had been weighed not in strength or intelligence, but in soul, and somehow found worthy, enough to be seen. The ship returned to Concord space without delay, passing again through the listening outposts and old warning markers, which now seemed outdated and almost childish. The moment their ship's presence was detected by the outer systems, signals burst through the communication networks of over 100 civilizations. They had returned, alive, unharmed, changed. What followed across the galaxy was a mixture of awe, suspicion, and panic. Some species viewed their survival as a sign of hidden danger, demanding stronger fleets, more surveillance, tighter borders near human space. Others gathered in silent councils to listen to Vahan's account, not to plan a defense, but to ask a quiet question: what if the humans were never enemies at all? Vahan spoke not in dramatic speeches, but in honest truths. He told them about the moon of light, the messages hidden in crystal, the massive archive holding knowledge beyond any known library. He described Salmon, the AI that did not test their weapons, but their wisdom. He shared the simulations, the choices they were made to face, the consequences they accepted without knowing they were being judged. And finally, he repeated the question that had stayed with him ever since: Would your people choose peace, even without benefit? That question echoed across political chambers, learning halls, temples, and spaceports. Yes, in a galaxy used to measuring power through speed, strength, and expansion, the idea that the greatest force might be the choice not to control was hard to accept. And yet it stirred something deep in many. They had always assumed that the human silence meant fear or loss. Now they realized it had been a kind of patient and ancient, watchful waiting, like a teacher who observes quietly before offering a lesson. Some still resisted, calling the humans manipulators, too powerful to trust. But many others began to see a new path. Vayon became a quiet voice of that idea, not a leader or a hero, but a witness. He didn't claim to speak for the humans. In fact, he admitted they might never speak directly again, but he believed their message was already clear. It wasn't written in commands or policies. It was written in the stars they protected from chaos, the disasters they prevented without praise, and the silence they kept so others could find their own way. Soon after, the Concord placed a new line on their navigational maps. It was not marked as a danger zone or a forbidden sector. Instead, it bore a new label, translated into every major language of the known galaxy: human space, respected territory. Entry requires understanding. That message was not meant to scare, but to remind. The silence of human space had never been empty. It had been full of listening, full of learning, and full of purpose. Across the galaxy, young explorers and old scholars alike began to revisit everything they thought they knew about humanity. Ancient records were reanalyzed, forgotten theories were restored, and in hushed voices, people began to speak not just of the humans' technology, but of their restraint. A restraint so strong, they chose not to lead, not to conquer, not to speak until someone listened carefully enough to ask the right questions. In private gatherings and deep space symposiums, a new thought began to take root. What does it mean to be truly advanced, if not kind? This question, once dismissed as philosophical, now felt urgent and real. Not because humanity demanded it, but because their quiet example had shown its weight. And so, for the first time in generations, the galaxy held its breath not in fear, but in reflection. Humanity had not returned to the center of galactic affairs, but they had reminded everyone that wisdom was not loud. Sometimes the most powerful voices are those that choose to wait, to watch, and to hope that others might someday walk beside them, not beneath, not behind, but as equals under the same stars.